Greetings, Ohio Valley. This is Dan Lima with OSU Extension from Belmont County.
And this is Karen Cox from WVU Extension in Ohio County. Thanks for tuning in to Extension Calling, your source for research-based information for the farm, garden, and home.
Hello, Karen.
Hey, Dan.
Welcome back, and you brought some guests with you.
I did. I've got some of my friends from West Virginia State University. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name is Eden Clymyer-Stern, and I am the West Virginia Tree Minders Extension Educator at State.
I am Liz Moss, and I am a Natural Resources Extension Associate.
Well, welcome to the show. And it sounds like we have natural resources, and then we have tree specialists here. So I sense a theme coming on, Karen.
What makes you say that, Dan?
It's just, I don't know, blind guess, I guess.
Yeah, so we do hope to talk about some trees today, but I think you have a really cool program that you wanted to tell us about first.
I do. Before we get into the woods, I would like to promote a program that we are putting together at the Ohio Extension side. So this is going to be a multi-county small farm financial college. So the Ohio State University Extension offices in Belmont, Guernsey, Jefferson, and Harrison will be hosting a small farm financial college this winter. The first session will be January 16th. It'll be in Belmont County at Pike 40. And we're going to talk about getting started on your new farm business. January 23rd will be at Black Sheep Vineyard in Jefferson County. And over there, we'll talk about you can't measure what you don't track. So record keeping, budgets, and taxes. January 30, we're going to be in Cadiz at Christopher's Farm Goods and Provisions. And we're going to talk about money and finances. And finally, the last session will be in Cambridge at Jurassic Park, which is right off of 22. And it'll be February 6th, and we're going to talk about the legal side of farm financial management. So this is a program for beginning and aspiring farmers, new rural landowners, small farmers, and farm families looking for new ideas. So you don't necessarily have to be new to farming to get a lot out of this. We're going to have some great speakers. We're going to have our farm financial team involved in it, our ag law team involved in it, ag educators from multiple counties. And we're really just going to get into the basics of the laws and the record keeping aspects and managing of a small business, or even just if you're starting off and you're just not sure what the best tools are. This will give you a lot of information and a lot of good direction. So if only one of these sessions sound appealing to you, you can just attend one. They start at 6 to 8:30. They'll be catered, so you'll have dinner. The cost is $25 a session. So it's a lot of good information. We're bringing in some top-notch people, and you will get a good meal out of it as well. So not too hard on the budget books. We are offering the beginning farmer certification, and that's going to cost $300, but you do get that back in your taxes. In fact, you will even learn about the bill that this certification is under, House Bill 95. I recommend, if you can dedicate 4 days, 4 evenings in the wintertime, January 16th, 23, 30, and February 6th, you will get a lot out of this program. And it's one of the biggest programs we've brought in a long time to this area.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I know a lot of times people aren't very interested in going to hear about legal topics, but I got to give some mad props to OSU's legal team. They have a really great way of interpreting things so that you can actually understand it. It's not all a whole bunch of legalese that's over your head. They do a really great job, and they have a blog called the Ag Law Blog, which is not overwhelming. I really got to give them props, and I think that this is a great opportunity. So if you're in the area and you're listening, I highly recommend trying to reach out to your Ohio Extension agent and get registered for this.
Right. So you can contact me in Belmont County, 740-695-1455. You can contact Erica Lyon in Harrison and Jefferson counties, and you can also contact Cliff Little in Guernsey County. Look us up. We'll be glad to answer any questions you have and get you registered if you just want to jump right in.
That sounds awesome. All right, so our guests here are tree people, just like me. Mm-hmm. So you got a whole bunch of tree nerds, and I hope that we have some fun stuff to share. So let's start with the standard introductory tree person question. And what's your favorite tree?
Oh, goodness. So if I could have my way, I think Eden would feel the same way. We would both probably be walking botanical guides of tattoos of different trees and plants. And my favorite has to be Quercus alba or white oak. I actually have a tattoo on my forearm of white oak leaves and 3 little acorns representing my kids and my husband.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. But I it's hard to pick. It's hard to pick. There's tulip poplar.
That's a good one too.
And black gum and sourwood. And okay, I'll stop now.
Yeah, so mine is Eastern hemlock.
Also,
I am a huge fan of the Eastern hemlock. Just the feeling of the Eastern hemlock forest and how calm and patient I feel like the trees are. I don't know.
I get a primordial feeling.
Yeah, that too.
From hemlock.
Yeah, it's and so that I don't know. I like how it makes me feel. So that's my tree. Hey Dan, what's your favorite tree?
My favorite tree is a sweet gum because I like the star-shaped leaves and those spiky fruits are fun to throw at my wife. No, no. I did that once and I regret it because I didn't think it would carry as hard as it did. So
she probably still mentions it to this day, doesn't she?
She does. I try to use it as a learning tool because I said, hey, what tree is this? And I said, liquid ambar or sweet gum. And I threw it thinking that she would remember. I threw it a little bit hard because I didn't think the wind would carry it, and it got her pretty good. So it was negative reinforcement at that point.
I just drank a spider.
So, glories of natural resource professionals. Eden just drank a spider.
It crawled in my mouth.
And these are things that happen in wooded lots and forest areas.
I don't know what type of spider that was.
Was it a big spider?
That's a spider I ate. He's right there.
Is he walking around?
He's a little moist.
Did you spit him out?
Yes.
Ew!
Oh, wow.
How did he get in there? It was closed.
It's a woodlouse spider. That's awesome.
Should we ask him?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I think he's dead. Poor spider.
Hey, should we ask him his favorite tree? His or her favorite tree?
Oh.
Oh my god. What's your favorite tree?
What's your favorite tree? Oh, no, that's a sack spider.
Eden's like, don't care, go throw.
I'm gonna go throw up.
There's a trash can right behind you.
Well,
Oh gosh. Okay. My favorite tree is probably a southern magnolia. I love the flowers. They smell great. It's beautiful all months of the year, which is awesome, and it's a nice big tree, so it provides a lot of shade.
see, and I know a little bit about the magnolia tree. It is one of the most primitive flowering trees. So it's a very unique and interesting tree for sure.
Very cool.
What pollinates magnolias? Beetles or...
That's a good question.
I say if it's an old tree, it's probably got to be beetles.
I don't know that detail, but I know it's very primitive. One of the first flowering trees that came about.
Among the first angiosperm.
But it's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a native magnolia in West Virginia, the cucumber magnolia.
Mm-hmm.
And it also has very beautiful flowers. But the problem with growing one of those in your yard is the beautiful flowers are way up in the sky because it's a tall tree.
Mm-hmm.
But it is still another beautiful magnolia tree. And it's our native one.
They've planted a few at the Charleston Capitol Complex, and they're not doing great, but they are quite beautiful.
I know we're kind of all over the place, and that's what happens sometimes, but the pawpaw is an interesting thought too. It's always been characterized as an understory tree, but what we have found is that once you bring it out to full sun, then you get the best fruits.
Yep.
Sometimes you don't really get nearly as much or at all the fruits that tree has a capacity to make in the understory setting where it's, either dappled shade or full shade. Either way, it's not getting that intense light. That's the energy. Because in many trees and many plants, the fruit production is kind of one of the last things that happens in terms of energy usage. and not having that full sun to bring it to that level of fruit production, you kind of miss out on that. With the pawpaw, from the research and from more people utilizing it as orchards, I think we're seeing a shift into going from an understory tree to more of a full sun tree.
Oh, absolutely. With cultivation, you'll probably see that change. Creating fruit takes a lot of energy, so you got to have more sun. Do you think also maybe you're not getting fruit in the understory because a lot of what you're seeing is the same plant genetically?
Another great point with pawpaw patches, as they call them, we see a lot of pawpaw trees in one area. It's a lot of rhizome growth. So it's a lot of underground root that shoot up a water sprout. So basically a shoot from the roots. So what you'll have is various trees in one area that are all genetically identical. And that doesn't do well for pollination purposes. In the flowering of a pawpaw, the stamens develop different from the carpel. So the male and the female part, they spatially mature separate as far as the chronological time goes. And, if that's the case and everything is pollinating at the same time, but there's no receptive carpel, then you're not going to get pollination from those genetics just because of timing. And it's fascinating. There's just so much, Karen and I have done shows on pawpaws before. Just the popularity of it is just exploding. And it's a fun native fruit, that we utilize in this area.
So yeah, they're considered triploid. I'm learning so much more about pawpaw as time goes on.
So is the entire world. It's kind of a new and emerging crop. Like trees are crops, whether it's a forest or a fruit production. It's a specialty crop, and it's being managed like one.
I'm getting actually into forest farming, and when I say getting into, I mean this is the very basic research. Do you see pawpaw having a future in that field?
Some of the biggest limitations with pawpaw, if we're talking about fruit production specifically, is the shelf life.
Yeah.
It's one of those fruits that you can't pick early because it doesn't really mature off the tree. And once you pick it ready to eat, you only have like a 48-hour window, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on variety, before it really just oxidizes and turns to mush.
Yeah.
So, a lot of these people, what they're doing for preservation is processing it for pulp, freezing the pulp, and then you have something that you can utilize later, or you just eat the fresh fruit when it's ready. But its biggest limitation as far as from a commercial standpoint is that shelf life. It's just very hard to manage.
And so in order for pawpaws to become viable in the industry, we need more processing capability.
Yeah, that value added aspect.
Yeah. To be able to preserve it, to be able to be put in things like beer and,
cream and jelly. Yeah.
Did you have that pawpaw jelly?
I haven't tried it yet.
A lot of the fresh products that you make with pawpaws, like jellies and salsas and even pawpaw beers, a lot of breweries are utilizing the pulp like in their batches. They're very popular, very tasty as well. Some of the limitations that we're finding with pawpaw processing too is in any kind of baking or any kind of dehydration type preservation or that you're utilizing the pawpaw for, it could be somewhat hard on a digestive system. And that's what people are finding with pawpaws. And we're still trying to figure out just the best way to handle it, to manage it. One, value added for sure, but also just to preserve it. It's something that it's hard to pick and sell in like a 2-week time period and be very successful as far as, long-term profit, because it just doesn't keep, and it doesn't have like this long fruiting period that a lot of fruits do. Apples, you have them ready in July and they go all the way to October, November, depending on the variety, depending on the tree, but that's not the case with pawpaws.
Yeah, unfortunately, that length of season with apples can actually decrease the viability of some varieties. Like, for instance, the wine sap, which I have fond memories of because it's what my mom likes to make apple pie with. They're really hard to find now because they don't come ripe till November, and the orchards are closed by November. They want their holiday too. So a lot of growers are getting out of those off-season varieties because the market isn't as strong in those times of year. But you should also recognize most of the apples you get at the grocery store, they were harvested last fall.
Yeah.
And so that's why they have that wax coating on them to help keep oxygen away from the skin of the apple so that they can have a longer shelf life. And so maybe that's something that they'll look into for Paw Paws.
Well, my wife goes crazy for the Lodi's, the early harvest apples.
Mm.
I think they make the best pies. My favorite fresh apple are the Melrose. It's kind of a newer variety that I stumbled onto, and it is quite delicious.
Yeah, I haven't tried that one. And when we start talking about fruit, one of the things that a lot of people get excited about is urban fruit forests. So planting a fruit forest in an urban environment so that there's basically a free, long-standing production of food in the area. People can just walk up and pick an apple. But there are some restrictions with that, right? So you guys have been working with some orchards down at State. Tell us about your learning curve for that.
Oh, okay. Liz here. My background is in urban forestry. And so when I worked for the Division of Forestry, I was told not to touch fruit trees. If anybody comes to you about fruit trees, send them somewhere else. And it's because it is a completely different ballgame. And yes, there is a huge interest in urban orchards. The issue that I run into mainly is soil quality.
Yeah.
And then fears of vandalism / messiness. So they're worried about the mess from the fruit. Who's actually going to go and take care of these trees? All these trees get planted and then nobody ever takes care of them, prunes them properly or nothing. And then so they're just taking up space that could have been taken up by another tree. So that's the main issue that I've run into. I have been trying to get homeowners to grow like dwarf apple trees in containers above ground. So that's something that we had to do on campus to make a micro orchard because we have heavy metals in the soil. So that was our solution, to just grow dwarf apple trees. These are max 8 feet by 8 feet spread. They're growing in 60-gallon containers so that we can kind of separate them from that quote unquote contaminated soil beneath.
How do they do in the wintertime though, being in a container?
In my case, I have covered them, like they're sitting in a bed of mulch. So their root systems are nice and warm. And the upper half seems to do fine. We planted them last November. They lasted through the winter. And they're doing okay.
I gotcha. So you're actually putting the pot into the mulch pile. So it's essentially buried.
Yes. So we actually buried these pots about 8 inches deep into the actual ground. And then we built a box around the row and filled the box itself with mulch all around so that you get that little insulating effect on the roots.
I love that. Yeah. So the Piketon Experimental Farm down in Southern Ohio, they've done that quite a bit with various trees, and they've done that with blueberries too.
Wow.
I think it's fascinating. I like that. I like that idea a lot.
I like it because you get an individual with an apple tree in their backyard. They're going to take care of it because it's one tree, and they learn that self-sufficiency. But you're also going to be coming back to learn how to prune it and to learn how to look for pest and disease and things like that. So it's part of an ongoing educational type of thing.
That's great. I like it.
We actually are involved in a partnership with a company called Diversified Energy that came to us to help plant trees back as part of their sustainability model to take care of some trees they took out for a pipeline in Wyoming County, West Virginia. And so we have planted close to 9,000 trees this year, but we also kind of convinced them to do this whole backyard tree thing, this containerized tree thing. We're like, there's so much space in urban areas that we need trees in, but we need people to actually take care of them too. And so much of our green space is in people's backyards. Mm-hmm. So why not get people some free trees? We help them select the right tree. And some of them want fruit trees. Mm-hmm. Some of them asked us for apple or fig. Some of them actually want to feed themselves. Mm-hmm. So, we spend a little bit more time with these individuals and getting them the right tree. But then, in the long run, hopefully that tree will last because it's the tree that was proper for the site.
And in urban forestry, we use a term called right tree, right place. And so we're really trying to push people to choose something that's, the appropriate size for their backyard or their front yard. And a shade-tolerant tree should be in an area that's shady. You know, we're trying to make sure that people are selecting the right trees for the location that they have. And that includes maybe a dwarf apple tree for a backyard that's 4 feet by 4 feet. You know?
Literally. Some people have an 8-foot green space. And I'm like, you can have a dwarf apple tree and you can have like a little piece of heaven in your backyard. So, I mean, I don't knock fruit trees, but then the idea of having like a public orchard, there has to be somebody to take care of it. There has to be somebody to at least monitor it and be like, hey, there's something going on. Mm-hmm. So that's the main issue is people get so excited about planting and the idea of it, and then the trees go in the ground. And if they're not producing in 2 to 3 years, people forget about them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So your apple orchards, I would just suggest like in an urban setting, going for dwarf trees because you do get that return on investment quick, and you can get more in a smaller space. But yeah, I'm still filling this out. Like I said, background in urban forestry. So when it comes to fruit trees, there's quite a learning curve there.
But yes, the right tree, right place mantra is so critical, though. You know, spending that extra time up front, you know, getting a tree in the ground is exciting and it's fun, but dealing with the tree after it's in the ground can either be fun or a nightmare, depending on whether or not you put the right tree in the right place. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we get this feedback from people. They're like, oh, I don't care. I'm not going to be here in 50 years anyway. Yeah. And it's just like, well, why are you inviting a problem for your children or your grandchildren to deal with? It just sounds so cruel to me. Mm-hmm. And so I really encourage people, even if you're not going to be here in 50 years, still try to plan for the future generations and give something that is going to not be in the wrong place, not the wrong tree.
Well, and also you're just going to maximize those benefits that tree provides if you choose a good tree for your location.
Right.
Even with that community-based tree planting that we're doing, you know, people are excited about planting trees, but they also ask about the trees that they have on their property. And, you know, is this tree in a good place? Why is it doing that? Why does it look so terrible? And a lot of the time it's because it was the wrong tree for the wrong location.
Or it was a volunteer planted by a squirrel.
Yeah.
Can I prune my neighbor's tree that's overhanging my property? We get lots of fun questions like that too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's a tough one too, because you can, I mean, legally in West Virginia. Now, every state is different and has different laws, but legally in West Virginia, you can prune your neighbor's tree for the part that's hanging over your lawn. But if you take that step, you're probably A, going to make your neighbor unhappy, and B, you might be increasing the problem that you have with the tree. Like, we had one guy contact us, and, you know, he was talking about the woman next door wanted him to cut down his tree, and she was trying to force him into it. And I asked him, like, well, why does she not like your tree? And he said that, well, she always complains that the leaves clog her gutters on her garage. I'm like, well, what if you offered to clean out her gutters for her?
Or just buy her some guards.
Right? You know, and so he's like, well, I never thought about that. You know, it's like there are other ways to solve problems associated with trees other than cutting a tree down. You know, we have gotten so out of the habit of talking to our neighbors. And it's very unfortunate. You know, take your neighbor a pie or invite them over for a cup of coffee. Just do those little things to help build those relationships with your neighbors, because that in the long run is going to help you solve problems rather than just continually fighting, because no one likes to hate their neighbors. It's just a waste of energy.
It really is. Don't I know that? I'm dealing in, I live in St. Albans and right outside of Charleston, and we are dealing with a lot of misplaced trees, a lot of ginkgos. That's some little garden ladies thought would be nice to plant, which they were, but they were all female. So all of 6th Street smells like vomit during the Christmas parade. And it's lots of fun. So since I've been there for the past 2 years or so, all I've seen is them cut down trees. And I've gone before the mayor and I said, we need to become a Tree City USA again, because they were one of the oldest in the state, I think, for a while there. They just haven't been a Tree City in, close to a decade, I want to say. But the mayor just saw all those ginkgos and said to himself, I don't want you to plant more garbage in my city, and I don't want you to tell me that I can't cut down a tree. And I said, that is not at all what I am trying to tell you. I said, it's opening up a dialogue between the residents and in city council about trees. I said, if anything, it's going to help you in the long run be able to avoid certain issues moving forward. So I've been working on that, and also the idea of calming traffic with trees. Because as they're cutting down more and more trees in neighborhoods, it seems like speeds are picking up.
Yeah, that's actually an observed thing, the traffic calming. Research has been done. Honestly, for those of you who are local in this area and are trying to drive through downtown Wheeling, that is the ultimate goal of that project, because we have Route 2 that runs right through downtown, and it's a traffic calming project to help slow people down and help reduce some of the dangers associated with a highway running right through the center of your town, because we do have crosswalks and pedestrians, and there's a lot of businesses downtown that really need your help right now. But no, it's important to have trees in those areas, but it's also important to make sure that the trees you're planting have enough soil space for their roots so that they can live longer than 10 years. Because you're putting $1 million into a planting project, you'd like those trees to actually live out their full life and maybe not have to do it again for 50, maybe even 100 years, trying to plan ahead, recognizing that trees actually do live that long if they have good conditions. But when you have an urban tree, maximum lifespans typically?
I saw a study that said it's usually about, I think, 8 to 28 years.
I was going to say it's very, very low.
Of a city tree. And, that's because trees in cities are stressed. They have all the pollution, salts, all that they're dealing with as well. So
lack of root space, re-reflected heat, VOCs, vandalism. Yeah.
But all those chemicals that those trees are dealing with, even though that hurts the tree, by them being there, it reduces what impacts the people that are there. And so it gives us healthier air. I was astounded to see the impact on childhood asthma in communities that had trees versus don't have trees. And my cohort, Lewis, just put this on my desk the other day. Study links neighborhood conditions to adolescent sleep loss. When researchers looked at the effects of green space, they found teens who lived in neighborhoods with just one standard deviation above the average number of trees fell asleep 18 minutes earlier and experienced more favorable sleep times overall. And so he does youth development, and he's like, look, our worlds are overlapping. And I'm like, see, now you understand trees are important.
They absolutely are. Any green space, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so our time is up. So thank you so much for joining us. We've really loved having you on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
That was great. Yeah, thank you so much, both of you.
Anytime you want to ramble about trees, we're here.
Yeah, I will happily come back to Wheeling. It's a darling little city.
Thanks for listening to Extension Calling. This show is a collaboration between OSU Belmont County Extension Educator Dan Lima and WVU Ohio County Extension Agent Karen Cox. If you'd like a transcript of this show, contact us at the office. Also, let us know if you enjoy the show by ranking us on your podcast app.